Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd like to request permission to enter into a record an op-ed by the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear war. Without objection. Thank you. We often hear that the term strategic. I know that we on this committee often think of capabilities, particularly our nuclear assets and their global impact. But another definition of strategic comes to mind for me, the idea of a grand strategy or aligning potentially unlimited aspirations with necessarily limited capabilities. I know that we're going to have to make hard decisions to ensure that we provide reasonable oversight, avoid unchecked and rampant spending on wasteful or unnecessary programs, and also to ensure that our spending truly provides for our national defense. So I want to thank the committee for its work, and I'm grateful for your highlighting arms control and international partnerships in your report. I'm also worried that our strategic posture is missing strategic or strategy. We all know that we face competition from Russia and China. We also know there's a growing risk of confrontation and that we do need to find ways to de-escalate. For example, how often do we allocate our resources to have the most efficient way to achieve peace and stability? My questions today really go to this report and how you set it up to win a war, but instead, how do we prioritize our efforts to prevent a conflict from ever emerging? How do we achieve that? You argue that because of the rising threats, the United States and its allies and partners must be ready to deter and defeat both our adversaries. You said China and Russia. My question is, what would it mean to defeat them? Is it a nuclear war against two nuclear-armed adversaries that somehow we could defeat them and win? I think not. But my question to both of you, is it necessary to defeat our competitors to provide security for the American people? For example, wouldn't arms control and de-escalation be preferable to a new arms race? My question.
So thank you very much, Representative Garamendi. So of course the answer is yes to your last question. It would be better to have effective strategic arms control that was both trilateral and that was consistently applied and consistently complied with. So obviously that is appropriate. But right now we are actually facing a situation where we may not have any strategic arms control agreements in place. And this is a very different world. We have both Russia and China are on the cusp of really having a three-peer competitor environment. So we need to have a strategy that deters. To be effective, deterrence must be credible, it must be believable, and not only, as I mentioned, not only to our adversaries, but also to our allies. And our allies have to be part of this, because together we are all much stronger if we are integrated in this. But when you talk about strategy, part of the strategy is to deter conflict in the first place. And to deter conflict in the first place, that deterrence has to be credible. And to be credible, that an adversary has to believe that if they start a conflict,
so
we have to be able to defeat them.
Excuse me for interrupting, but then your argument indicates that our current nuclear systems are not credible. Is that what you're arguing?
No, not at all, sir. Remember, our commission report is very much forward-looking. So we look into the future, 2027 and beyond, and we see a threat trajectory that's going in a certain direction. Assuming that threat trajectory continues, we have to make some changes in our strategy. And it's those changes, primarily conventional, some nuclear, but primarily conventional, are going to be needed. Tankers is a good example, to keep us out of that conflict to begin with. And we have to worry about not only one conflict, we have to worry about two conflicts, either sequential or simultaneous. It's a new environment. We have to be prepared for this and plan to be prepared for this.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I subscribe to the comments that Madeline has just made to you. Obviously, deterrence is in the mind of the person you're trying to deter. And they have to believe that you're serious enough about trying to prevent conflict that you'll do whatever is necessary to defeat them should they be tempted to try to attack you. And therefore, we have to have the kind of forces in place, both conventional and nuclear, that provide that kind of deterrent.
Gentleman's time's expired. I will admit into the record the opinion piece by Senator